Then to the actual prompting. So I will start off by giving Claude Code some context. So I will type something like, I've created a folder system that has different files related to the organization AT4D. So I've created a folder system that has different files related to the organization AT4D. Have a look at the folder scheme to understand the layout. Then I'm going to go ahead and type in what my actual goal is. I'm trying to create a structured process to take in the input, potentially enrich with your own research in the research folder, turn it into a brand consistent for PDF document that will serve as informational material for Momentous Fund and AT4D in general for potential partners. Okay. Then maybe give it some ideas on, maybe give it some direction on like what good looks like. A good document will make good use of our brand guidelines and our, let's say, assets and photos. Okay. And then I can say something like it should have the clarity and structure of a, let's say, a McKinsey presentation, although I'm not in love with McKinsey, not all the time, and the design aesthetic of an Apple document, right? So this is like high level overview of what good looks like for this document. Maybe add some more instructions. It should be easy to read through, and each page in the document should have clear message or takeaway, and this could be expressed implicitly, because I don't want it to then go and actually have a box saying the takeaway, right? Just that the page should have sort of an implicit takeaway that is very clear to discern for the reader. I will also go ahead and say, create me a context. So a context.md file, or maybe .md files, they're called markdown files, and they're essentially text files that the LLMs, Claude Code in this case, can read quite easily. I just want to create some form of like reference document where the context is, and then I'm going to go and you will see I'll have Claude Code read that context document again, and then maybe refine it a little bit, and then we can go ahead and plan what this process could look like. Maybe I'll add one more thing for the context.md file. I just want to say I want to create a standard process from this in the end where I can input a piece of content and turn it into different output formats. I'm going to say in addition to the PDF, we'll do something like HTML pages, presentation. So HTML pages are for, let's say, if I want to put it on the website, presentations, and let's say LinkedIn carousels. Okay. And then I'm going to go create me a context file, reading the context architecture. So essentially, it's going to go through what's in here and kind of figure out like what the use case of each bucket is, and maybe have an idea of what some of the components are within each. So it's going to put that in context.md and put that in the instructions folder. And as we go along, if I ask you to maybe standardize things, put them in that folder as well, right? And then if you press Shift Tab, you can go through different modes. You see here on the left bottom corner, essentially there's plan mode, which you can go back and forth with Claude Code without it actually writing output. This is really helpful when you want to think through things and structure before actually producing any output. You can go to bypass permission, which I don't recommend at this point, but we'll talk about at a certain point. But then ask before edits or edit automatically. This asks for permission whenever it wants to write a folder or browse the internet or search for something. If it wants to do anything outside of Claude Code, it asks for permission. Usually it's safe to keep it at that. But I want to actually do stuff in plan mode initially. So I'm just going to go ahead and enter this prompt. So again, this is a fairly structured prompt. In normal circumstances, I could actually just use this to try and produce outputs. But I think for the sake of the exercise, let's try and really add detail around the different components for this workflow so that we get the best results possible. So as you can see here, it's exploring the AT4D folder structure. So it's looking at these different folders and the files within them. It's looking at Claude.md. Again, it's a markdown file that usually has system level prompts or instructions. So this would have information around how a Claude Code should behave. if it should produce like summarized outputs, which English grammar should it use. It's a kind of a living document for Claude. We're not going to tap into it right now. I don't think it's that important at this point. It's important in other places, but I think for the sake of this exercise, we'll not focus on it. So yeah, it's reading all through these different documents, and then we'll see what it comes up with. So in about 30 seconds, it gave us a clear plan. So again, it kind of structured the prompt that I gave it even further. It added a few more details, but essentially AT4D, Assistive Technology for Disability Trust, is a standardized process to transform raw content into polished, brand consistent outputs for potential partners and investors in Momentous Fund. Yes, the first deliverable is context.md file in instructions that captures the full project context, brand identity, design system, and then it creates some form of maybe like navigation map for the folders. So here it shows like what the context.md file will contain, project overview, brand design system. So it kind of pulled the different colors. It has our typography, our design principles, CSS variables reference. Essentially, those are the more visual components of HTML outputs, where we can go through them in more detail. And then it kind of did an audit of the inventory. Again, it kind of looked at the different logos that are in there, what photos exist, etc., etc. And then it kind of came up with a 4-step process. So as you can see here, step 1, it extracts and structures, enriches with research, messaging alignment, etc., and then designs the actual process and then creates the actual output. We'll go through and like add to these processes. But again, as you can see, it actually went ahead and gave me quite a comprehensive overview and context for what I'm trying to do. Yes, I like this plan. I'm just going to go ahead and accept it. So then we will see in a second that in the folder instructions, it's going to create context.md, and then it's just going to double check its work. So it's going to verify that everything that it's referenced is actually correct. I think that's a very solid starting point. Again, that's the goal of trying to organize our thoughts and kind of clearly articulating what the goal is, just to give it that sort of structure and organization. Okay, so it created the context.md file for us. It's probably going to contain the stuff that it kind of showed before. And then if we actually go ahead and open it, you will see that it has all of the information. So organization, the mission. Again, it did some additional research or pulled from some of the input documents. It kind of gave it key messaging pillars, tone of voice. It like extracted all of the important things. You can see here, it also extracted all of our different colors. I can actually just say in my further instructions to use particular colors or omit others. Usage rules, again, these are all things that I can actually edit, right? So blue for primary headings, orange for calls to action. Yes, I kind of like that. Typography, it kind of put by Jamjuri, which is a font that I really like actually. And then where Claude could actually find it. So it's a very detailed document, as you can see. So that's great. I'm going to close that. And as you can see, it actually wrote it directly into my instructions folder. So I don't need to copy and paste anything. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to type in /clear conversation. So / commands are kind of pre-programmed instructions within Claude Code. There are multiple ones. They all have different functionality. Clear conversation does exactly what it says. It clears the conversation. It doesn't open up a new portal, but it just clears everything that we have discussed. And the reason why it is good to clear conversation whenever you reach a milestone is because if we are on the lowest subscription tier, which is the Claude Pro, one of the biggest challenges is that people run out of their daily limits fairly quickly, around maybe 44,000 tokens a day, which is around, depending on the complexity of the prompts, maybe 15 to, let's say, 20 to 30 really high quality prompts, which again is not a lot, especially if we're not really planning for those sessions. And the way to preserve token is to preserve something called context window. And essentially, obviously, we have the context and the memory, which is all of the information in the folders on the left. But then on every interaction or every conversation with Claude Code, there's a short-term memory called the context window. And the name of the game to build with AI on a shoestring is to preserve the context window. So what happens in the context window? Every time I type in a prompt, the LLM or Claude Code in this case does some sort of thinking or processing. It can like read some of the files. It produces an output. All of that is stored in the context window. So let's say the context window has a capacity of, let's say, 100%. Usually it's preloaded with certain things like certain system instructions like the Claude MD that I mentioned earlier. Other system instructions. Skills are also usually encoded within the context window. So it comes at like a 70% capacity. So I type in a prompt and I ask it to go and read through all my content in my folder system. It then fills my my content window a little bit more. And then it produces an output and it fills it a little bit more. So now by, let's say, 2 or 3 prompts, I'm actually at only 30% capacity for my context window. Every time I type a new prompt, everything in the context window, even though you don't see it, gets inputted in that prompt. So let's say I'm having a long conversation with Claude Code, and I ask it to do so many things. And then for some reason, I type in, hey, are you still there? Even though it's only a few words, but it's actually loading all of the conversations and all of the output and all of the processing and everything that is read into that one prompt, right? So that means whenever it's trying to perform that prompt to respond to it, it's actually burning more and more tokens. So what I did just now is I've actually cleared the context window. So now we're back at that 70% capacity so that I don't have additional baggage that I actually don't need that I take with me every time I prompt. And why do I don't need that additional baggage? Because I have the context.md file now. So the context.md was a part of the context window before I cleared it. And that's the part that I actually need, but then it had 100, maybe 1,000 other things as well. So now I've cleared it. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to say read the, and then you can actually tag particular folders or files, read the context.md. And what do I want to do? Help me further plan and structure. I'll just say, just respond with okay for now. Okay. And I'm also going to go to plan mode. I'm just going to type in yes. Okay. Nice. So I'm still in plan mode. There are certain things that I actually want to do. And essentially, those components will help me enrich the context.md folder, because what I have now is just the starting point. And then I'm going to use the context.md to then actually help me produce an output, right? So consider the context.md as a working document in this case, where we will kind of enrich and build up on as we plan. So now some of the questions that I have for Claude that will help me enrich the context.md file are things like, if I want to achieve both the structural clarity and the compelling design aesthetic without compromise, because I want both, what is a good persona that my agent can adopt? Try to be quite detailed. Okay, I think that's a fair question, right? It's still in plan mode, so it's not going to do anything. It's just going to think and then give me a response. Let's see what it gives me. Here's a persona I'd recommend drawing from what context MD demands. A senior creative director and information designer specializing in investor-grade communication for impact ventures. Okay, sounds a bit abstract. They produce pitch decks for Bridgewater, annual report for Gates Foundation, and campaign materials for Ashoka Fellows. They think in 2 tracks simultaneously, the strategist and then the art director. Okay, so then I gave core principles, brand constraint that liberates, working method, page narrative. Okay, so it gave me a lot of information here, but I think it like boxed me into this like component, right? So Bridgewater, working with investors and impact ventures. Yes, this is all what I need to do now, but I actually want this document to serve maybe a broader audience, or I want the skill sets that this agent will bring to the workflow to be a bit more generic. So maybe I'm going to say something like, this is good, but maybe think of a persona that can apply to a wider maybe audience / use case than impact ventures investors. The document needs or should read as a compelling narrative as well. It should be informative and beautiful. I was thinking maybe simplify the persona, and I was thinking more in the line the structuring and storyboarding capabilities of a, let's say, McKinsey engagement manager. Come back to the McKinsey examples, and then the design string. This, I think it's good to have fairly detailed, less than someone with the design clarity and strength of a senior Apple designer. I think it's good to have clear personas, but I don't think they need to be too detailed, because the details are actually in the instructions. Maybe I'll say something like, the information for the persona shouldn't, actually, never mind. So let's do this and see what we get. So what I asked it to do is, instead of boxing me into this impact investing investor landscape, is to think about it more holistically from a storytelling point of view. I think McKinsey engagement manager means senior Apple design lead, someone who structures information with a ruthless logic of a top tier strategy consultant, then presented with the visual precision and restraint of the 2 halves, the Apple half, how they work together persona resolves this, operating rules. Okay. All right. I think it's fine. I like it. Go ahead and update context.md with this. Okay. So let me read the current context on MD. And then let me write this as a plan for approval first. So I actually need to leave plan mode for it to be able to write this into context.md. So what I do is I press Shift and Tab. Yeah, I guess it's fine. Auto accept. I'll go back to plan mode. I'm not too sure what I approved. User wants to define agent persona. Yes. Insert a new section 1.5 below the current section. Okay, agent persona. So it didn't have it before. Okay, so it like inserted the stuff above in its right kind of in its respective spots in the context.md, which is what I was after. Okay, so it did what it was meant to do. It updated the context.md. If we actually open it, you will see it added. Let's see where it added information, project context, social partners. Let's see where, yeah, so agent persona, clarity engineer, and then added the hybrid and inserted the things in its relevant areas. So now a question that I have is, what internal and external tools can I use to enhance my workflow? And since I've done this before, I have a good idea of what tools I would need. And by internal tools, I mean Python libraries or other pieces of software that would help me do some of the stuff internally, like extracting information or writing PDFs or modifying PDFs or creating certain graphs or visuals. And by external tools, I mean things like Slack, Gmail, WhatsApp, HubSpot, Monday.com. There are thousands and thousands of them, right? So let's say we're in this position where we don't know what tools we could use to actually get the output that we want. So I can ask, what internal and external tools can I use to get the output that I want? Give me a full mapping, including Python libraries, let's say. So let's look at what Claude came up with. So enhancement tools for the AT4D content pipeline. Like I said, the goal here is to try and create some sort of mapping of different tools, both internal and external, that we can use to enhance not only this particular output, but generally the standardized process of creating these documents. So what does it say? Context, the current pipeline uses Playwright, headless to screenshot HTML, slides, and pillow to assemble. Without getting into too much detail, Playwright is essentially like a testing and automation framework that connects to different browsers. So what happens is when Claude Code creates an output, Playwright and Chromium then open it up on the browser, and then Pillow is like I think it's a Python library that then takes screenshots, and then this is how you can give Claude Code kind of eyes on what it creates. We're not going to go into the details of it now. I probably only know maybe 10% of everything in here, but we can scan quickly and see like what looks good from a high level. So Ginger 2, this first one, HTML templating with variable loops conditions. What does it actually do? Instead of hand coding every HTML, it creates a template. Okay, I like the sound of creating a template. Kaleido, interactive charts. I think this could be quite fun. I know PDFs don't have interactive charts. Let's say if I want to create a web page, a website, this might be one that I want to use. The code, Signal, SVG to PNG PDF. If I do have SVGs in my logos, so maybe I do want to connect to turn them into PNG, might be a good one to install. A PyPDF, I've actually used this one before and we'll see it, but essentially it's a Python library to manipulate PDFs. In this case, we're actually writing a PDF from scratch, but sometimes when you have a PDF that you want to do some sort of formatting on, either adding a new page or creating overlaying text or redacting, or I think this is a good one to use. I think we'll see it in the future. Specialist use cases, alternative statistical charts. So alternative to Plotly for simpler, cleaner chart aesthetics. I actually like this one. It sounds good. We'll use it. FPDF2, programmatic PDF correction, directly in Python, stat summarises, dynamic tables. I actually never used this one before, but it looks like there are multiple here that we can use. So external tools, Figma, GoScript. I know that we can connect it to tools like GitHub and Vercel if it's a web page and we want to host it in our own domain. And then quality assurance, I think this is an important one. So Playwright visual comparison. This is the one that we currently have, which is, it takes screenshots and then kind of verifies the output just to make sure everything is clean and neat. Actually, I didn't see that it has a cost column as well. No, it only has them for the external ones. Okay, I think this is a very good map. Generally, I don't think we will need everything. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say create a separate MD file in instructions and call it tool map with all of this information. And then for this particular output, I want you to focus on, okay, so let's see, which are the ones that we think could be useful. So Ginger 2, I think this is a good one. Plotly and Kaleido, maybe Cairo SVG, also Altair, and obviously Playwright Visual Comparison. Add those to my context.md file as potential tools that we can use if needed. I don't want you to install any tools just yet, but let's keep it in context.md for reference. So you're going to do these two different actions. And I just used a very quick hack where I just kind of dictated the prompt. So I think it's a good one. Plotly, Kaleido, Cairo SVG, also there. I think that's how you spell it. Anyway, so let's go ahead and see what happens now. Okay, so as you can see and here, it says that it will do both actions, create a detailed tool map and instructions, and then add selected tools to context.md as reference. So because it's in plan mode, it cannot execute immediately until it asks me. Add a standalone instructions, done, already created with full catalog. Fantastic. A new section instructions listing selected tools. So yeah, it just wants to add these 8 tools to the context. Yes. Accept. Fantastic. It's nice when it's actually doing what you want it to do. So we'll just double check on the tool map. So as you can see, it just listed all of the different tools that it did research on. It's very good to have this in handy, just because I might want to go back to it at a certain point. And by me going back to it, I mean asking Claude Code to read it again. So done. Updated context.md. It now gave me a tool map. So now I have the tools component already registered. I don't need to install them now. Again, I'm just in planning mode. I don't want to execute on anything. So what I'm going to do now is, again, Shift Tab, going to go back to plan mode. And then I'm going to ask it a question around what is the best sequence of kind of operation to create the PDF document. As a reminder, maybe this is a reminder to myself, there will be an A4. As you can see, guys, I can dictate much quicker than I can write. Okay, what do I have in mind then for the process? So it will be something like, I imagine you will start off by reading the input folders and trying to come up with a finalized synthesis of all of the input folders. This document will be the ultimate source of reference for the workflow. You can ask me whether or not I want to enrich it with research, either from the folders or externally. Then I imagine the workflow will try and break this input folder into its different sections, each section with a particular message and information, following the persona and the structure in the context.md file. I also then imagine the workflow would create a nice looking template, making use of the different tools that are available to it at that moment in time. This template should follow the persona of the senior designer in the context. And then I imagine the following step would be to populate the template, which will again look slightly different depending on the purpose of each of the sections, whether it's a title, a page, or whether it's an informational page or infographic page. I know you're going to capture that nuance, but then it should populate the template. It should then produce an HTML format in the style of an and then I imagine you will invoke the Playwright tool and process to take screenshots of your work and verify that everything is in place and do the necessary modifications. Is this sort of the right way of thinking about it, or would you add other bits to the process to make it really airtight? So again, because I dictated all of this, it just captured it and I wrote it down. I'm using a tool called Whisperflow, by the way, which is very easy to use. I'm on their 2-week free trial, so I don't know. They have this thing where I think they're going to lock me in, but this is what I used just now. So essentially, I'm giving it my raw thoughts, which are not very structured, as you have heard, and then I'm trying to have it come up with some form of structured plan that I will add to the context. But before I do that, I'm actually going to select all, and I'm going to cut. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear conversation again, because this is a good kind of milestone. So I'm going to go here. And then at the beginning, I'm just going to say, just because I want to root and anchor whatever prompt in the context folder. And I cleared the conversation just because I don't want to add or bring in some of the unnecessary stuff. I did the mistake again where I'm not in plan mode. So I'll go back, go to plan mode. Again, just keeping a good work hygiene here, guys. I'll go to, and then see what it comes up with. Okay. And as you can see now, it's actually a lot quicker since I've toggled the thinking bit off. Okay, so it came up with a plan. So it gave me a compliment. It's always nice to hear. My mental model is very close to what the context.md pipeline describes. Great. I know it already had some of that, but just in case it didn't, I just wanted to make sure I touched on it. And then, okay, very close. What I'd make to add it airtight. So storyboard checkpoint. Before design work, write out a single sentence purpose for each page is explicit. If the storyboard doesn't flow when read aloud as a paragraph, the structure isn't ready. Oh, actually, I like that. So logo and photo asset verification. Iterative render loop, yes. Quality checklist, pass. Okay, fantastic. So this is the refined sequence. It then asks me, before it writes the formal plan, do I want it to enrich the research? Do I want it to only do inputs, only research folder? Maybe I'll do something like, ask me when I perform the task if I want to enrich it. Okay, so I think that's good enough. Maybe I'll add one more thing as well. Make sure that in context.md, there's a component where the workflow looks at both previous examples and inspiration and dissects both for potential kind of design guideline or content guideline. Just as that as a currently there's nothing in either, but just to make this quite a standardized process for future outputs, it's good that it is included in the context.md. Boom. I think this is generally good. Let's see. Should I show you the storyboard page by page outline for approval before starting a design? Yeah, I think for now, let's just go for it. So now it's actually going through the project, seeing what exists, just kind of to update the structure inside the context.md. And then it's probably going to give me another plan to approve. And then I will say to write those in the context.md. So yeah, we'll see. Okay, now we have our plan. So again, context, step-by-step sequence. So this is what it wants to do. It wants to update context.md, so add the reference and inspiration step. So this is what I gave it as an instruction. And then it actually went ahead and gave me a full plan for execution. Again, it looks like Claude is very eager to get this going, but I am still not ready. So I'm not going to accept this plan just yet. I'm actually going to say only execute step 0 and then await further instruction from me. Guys, like all of this is in plan mode. Like we still haven't created an actual output. So I'm gonna press OK. Another really cool thing about Claude Code is you can queue certain tasks. So if you know what the sequence is going to be for certain things, you can go ahead and queue them. So what did it do? Let's see. Claude's plan, A4 context. The goal is update context, add references, step 0. Yeah, actually, ask me the same question again. No, as I said, only update the context.md file with the, let's say, step. Do not do anything else. Okay, let's say I need to exit plan mode before I can edit. When I click exit plan mode, it's just requesting your approval. What I'll do, done. It's doing what I'm saying, asking it to do. Oh, okay, I'm going to say no key planning. I'm just going to say just update context. I'm actually going to exit planning mode and see if it will do that. So again, just a little bit of troubleshooting. Okay, so it's doing that for me. And while it's doing that for me, remember when I said earlier, the name of the game is context management. There's another very important component that I didn't mention. Another / command, if you type in switch model or you type in model, is it will give you the different model options that you can look at. Let's see, what did it do? Make this edit, demo, formation path, context MD. Yes. Okay, so editing. Yeah, what I was saying is you go to model, you can switch to different. Sorry, guys, wants to make further edits. I'll just wait for it to actually finish and then I'll show this point. Okay, done. Fantastic. Thank you. My point was you can go to model, switch model. And remember when I said there's the LLM, and then there's the environment, and Claude Code is the LLM, and VS Code is the environment. You can also choose different models within Claude Code, right? These models have very clear trade-offs in terms of how good they are, in terms of output, in terms of thinking, in terms of capability, but also in terms of how expensive or resource intensive they are to run, right? So if you run the latest model, which is Opus 4.6, this is going to consume more tokens. So you're going to run out of your allowance, data allowance much quicker, but then you might get better results. And then Sonnet is the one in the middle, and then Haiku is the one for quick actions. So far, I have primarily used Opus 4.6 in the planning. Generally, if you can, just use the most capable models, with a caveat that there is an environmental cost that comes to them, either in terms of energy consumption and water usage. So there's an argument to be made that you don't need to use the most capable models all the time. You should kind of be mindful on how to use it depending on your task. Generally, when you use a more capable model in planning, it creates a clearer or higher quality maybe instruction. And then maybe when you want to rerun or run the actual instruction, you can use a less capable. I don't like Haiku. I don't think it's a really good one. But sometimes if I want to do something like a surgical edit, or I can use Haiku. So yeah, this is some of the things that you should put in mind in terms of usage. You can see here there are multiple opuses. So Opus 4.6, this is the normal context window opus. So it has, let's say, it has 200,000 tokens, without getting into too much detail. And then you have Opus 4.6. This one has 1 million context window, 1 million token context window. So it essentially has 5x the capacity of Opus 4.6. So what does this actually mean? It means you can run a session without having to clear the conversation. Essentially, when you have a continuous stream of thought or output or process, the models create a better output if they have continuous context of what you're doing, because they're learning as you're learning. They're building up this context. But then obviously the downside is you're using up more and more tokens. So Opus, the 1 million context window, it has extended capability, so you don't have to clear and lose some of the context. Maybe people who want more precise control or continuity over the token do that, but it's more expensive. As you can see here, it's billed as extra usage. I'm using the normal token one, and I am clearing context and storing everything. So I'm storing everything in context.md and then clearing the context window just as a way to manage it. So yeah, just a general note on that. Okay, one last thing in planning before we actually jump into making stuff. You can do some Google search or some online search around Claude code best practices for creating a PDF. Sometimes I find Substack or Medium articles or what people have found useful in terms of tools or libraries or processes that have created or generated the outputs that they want. Maybe it's worth, for whatever output you want to create, have a look at, maybe just read through a few references on what some people are doing. You can copy and paste that into Claude code and then ask it to kind of do a gap analysis with your context.md. And then if there are any notable gaps, you can either enrich your context.md or leave out. So again, that's another trick that you can use. And then one of those tricks is, and I think this is something that I've learned through trial and error, is I find that the best way to get to a PDF or a PowerPoint output is through creating something called an HTML file. And HTML is essentially a code-based output that your browser can read, right? So an HTML file is not read by Microsoft PowerPoint or Adobe PDF, but it's read by your Google Chrome or your Edge. And essentially the difference between an HTML and a PDF or a PowerPoint is that the latter two are made for like human users, right? So they are maybe complex coordinate systems where every pixel has a coordinate in sort of the canvas or in the array, and then the combination of those pixels make up the pages or the slides, etc. HTML is quite different. It's actually a code description of where all of the information is and what it actually looks like. So just to give you a quick example, so if I double click on AT4D brand book, I mean, we've all seen a PDF. There's nothing new here, but essentially everything that you see here are individual pixels that then are encoded depending on this XY plane and where they are. And then if you go to an HTML output, so I actually do have an HTML output here. Let's see, and I'm going to close this one quickly first. But these are, I think this is an HTML output. If I click on it, you'll see its actual code. So it describes where the information should be, how the information should be outlined. It describes all of the different color codes. And the difference is because large language models, LLMs, are trained on vast amounts of code and text particularly, they are much better at generating HTML output, more so than PDF and PowerPoint.